A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason through the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
All right, welcome into One Giant Step. One giant turd of a loss is what the New York Giants experienced today. But honestly, the good news is for the first time ever in One Giant Step history, it's a live version edition here. I'm Shaun Morash, Bryce Gelman, in person here.
Thank you for having me.
As you can probably see when you see this on YouTube, we are doing this show from my father's backyard bar, Bob's Bar, with a football Sunday that is unraveling at the heels. Full disclosure, we are taping this at a time the Jets are losing 31-6, so not exactly the day for New York football. But Bryce, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can go here. So I don't want to say I'm speechless because I am stunned that they actually lost this game to Carolina. But let's just start there. Before we talk about ramifications or where it went wrong, they actually did it. They lost the game to the Carolina Panthers, which we both said on our preview edition. By the way, One Giant Step, download, subscribe everywhere podcasts are available. What did we say? This would be the game that if you lost, maybe you do have the conversations about Brian Daboll. And I hate that that's the case. I see Pat Leonard, the Daily News, has already put out something, basically you have to fire Daboll and Shane. I'm going to dig my heels in and defend them to the bitter end. But, man, now you really worry about a locker room the rest of the way. If you can't beat the Panthers, when are you winning another game this year?
I agree, and I don't think this is time. Shaun's daughter gets involved. My production. My production is what happens. I don't think it's time. Shaun, I think that I get it. I understand the need to put out an article that it's time to let them go. We've discussed it a million times,
right.
And I said I don't think that it's going to be impacted by what happened to this game. They lost a game. They needed to lose. It's not completely on them that the running back fumbled twice, the quarterback threw 2 picks, played a terrible game. Well, it's not on them.
I know, and I'm glad you said this. So this is going to get into obviously the biggest issue. Stunner, the reason the Giants lost this football game was because Daniel Jones stinks. And Daniel Jones' final stat line of this game is earthly awful, okay? Daniel Jones, 190 yards passing. 2 picks, no touchdowns, took 2 sacks, a 34.2 QBR. He was awful. But the stats are even more misleading than that. This Giant team, as much as they rallied in that second half, and we'll point to Tyrone Tracy putting the ball on the carpet in overtime, and I felt horrible about him, more on that in a second. Ultimately, what happened with the New York Giants today is Daniel Jones put this team in an insurmountable hole early. That first drive of the game, when Malik Neighbors is wide open on that third down to throw the ball 20 yards over his head. The flea flicker, which we could debate, right play call, wrong play call.
Doesn't matter. 3 guys wide open.
Malik Neighbors will basically dance for 30 yards there. He doesn't throw the ball. And then, of course, the picks, the too tight a window there where that ball bounced off with Tracy. It was awful. It was awful football. And ultimately, Bryce, they are now entering their bye week at 2-8. They've lost to the Carolina Panthers. It's very clear, by the way, we don't have to talk about are they too good to win more games. They're going to be picking in the top 3 of this draft. I mean, there's just no other way around it. They're not going to win enough games, but they cannot start Daniel Jones in 2 weeks. This is the 17th podcast we've done talking about this. It's the bye week now. If you don't make the change at the bye week where he was awful in Germany, when the hell are you making this change?
Were you not shocked when he came back out there in the second half? I was shocked. I thought it was over. I thought, first off, they put him back in. And that last drive with, there's 15 seconds left. I was shocked that he came in then. The fact that he came in the second half, what does that say based off what this team thinks about him? Because I saw a bunch of stuff out there. It's either, either they're not afraid for their jobs, either they think they've got really good job security, which I think that's what it is. Because if you're trusting Daniel Jones to throw him out there, listen, it beats me. I still don't get it. Listen, they're running a read option. I forgot when exactly the read option was. I think it was end of the third quarter. You're running a read option. This guy is an injury guarantee. What is happening here?
They're not going to coach the game from the injury guarantee standpoint, but I would also say this: they're also not running with Daniel Jones designed as much. You know what I mean? Like they're doing it in those ways. They're not going to not call the plays, but they're also not calling them as frequent enough. This is just a disaster, any way, shape, or form. He cannot play. He cannot play in 2 weeks. He is the reason they lost this game today. He is the reason that this season has been lost and spiraled. There's too many of these games the Giants have been in. Shocker, there's another one where the quarterback was not good enough. And look, Daboll's going to get grief. And a lot of people are going to point to, and I've already seen it, the flea flicker play on 3rd and 1. Do you run a flea flicker in that spot? And I am here just to tell you this very simply. On 3rd and 1, you are running that play under the assumption of if this is an incomplete pass, I'm going to probably run the ball and go for it a 4th and 1, right? And we've seen Dable's aggressiveness. What cannot happen under that play is take a sack. Take a sack. You have to throw the ball. And wide receivers are wide open. That to me summed it all up. And if I'm Brian Dable, he was adamant. He was angry on the sideline after that play. He went over and he basically was staring Daniel Jones down. He ended up dapping him up at the end. That can't happen. So I don't know what the disconnect is at this point. I don't know if this is an edict from up top. Hey, Daniel Jones is a quarterback. Stick with him, stick with him, stick with him. But you are now going to be returning home off a bye week and a lost year at 2-8 versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a damn good football team. How do you sell to any fan that's going to that MetLife parking lot in the middle of the swamp, cooking their sausage and peppers at 8 in the morning, they're going to watch Daniel Jones play quarterback? He cannot be. That has to be it.
We talked about it. I still think that Tommy DeVito is going to be the quarterback when either it's going to be Drew Lock, they're going to play him for half,
right.
They're going to see it again. How many times have you seen it? They've tried to give him a chance. He sucked in the preseason. He's not a good quarterback.
This is where Joe Shane comes into play.
Yeah.
We're watching a Jet game right now where I don't know if Tyrod Taylor's going to come in. If Tyrod Taylor was the Giants' backup right now, would a change have already been made?
Yes.
Probably.
100%.
So if you knew about this injury guarantee and you knew how bad Daniel Jones was, the Giants settled for Drew Lock instead of just rolling DeVito out there as the backup at $5 million a year. And if they don't think he's good enough to supplant what we've seen from Daniel Jones, that to me, you want to start giving a little bit of knock here and there to Joe Shane. They didn't do a good enough job backing up whatever they were doing with Daniel Jones, knowing the flaws he had.
If you remember in Hard Knocks, they were within $1 million of the Jets and what they gave Tyrod Taylor. They didn't end up giving him that contract, and they decided to bring in Drew Lock under the assumption, is what he heard at first, that he would have a chance to compete for the starting job. And of course, we know immediately when he gets in the quarterback room that that's not the case.
Right.
So it was never the case. So you're going to pay that much money to a guy you never had any hope in? Because listen, if you didn't think that he could have competed to be the starting quarterback, you didn't think too highly of him in the first place.
I agree. It's awful. It's beaten down. It's a tired topic at this point. Now, can we do some positives here on One Giant Step? Are there positives to take away? Here's the first positive. I said this a couple minutes ago, and it needs to be hammered home. We're done now with the Giants maybe too good to play themselves out of picking in the top 5, top 3 in the strip. They stink. They suck. They're abominable. And they might very well get the first overall pick in the draft. And unlike what happened with Jaden Daniels after the Giants beat the Patriots and beat the Commanders last year, you got to hit the right quarterback. Maybe that's Cam Ward. Maybe it's Shedeur Sanders. I don't think it's Carson Beck. Whatever. Insert name here. When we get to draft night, we will look back on whatever the November 10th and go, man, remember how crappy that was losing the Panthers in Germany? That was a good thing because we're not worried about a trade-up scenario right now.
What did I say? They needed to lose this game. They needed to lose this game.
Now I'll give you positive number 2. You know what else I think happened today? I think the Carolina Panthers might have found enough in their quarterback play with 2 straight wins, where that's another team that's a bad team that, dare I say, are we sure they're drafting a quarterback this year?
Not after tonight. I was literally sitting there.
Because you the Panthers, wouldn't you get Bryce on a 3rd year and then go maybe draft somebody at the top of the draft who's a better player than any of these quarterbacks?
Made Bryce Young look like a competent quarterback. Quarterback that may actually have something in this league. They gave him enough time in the pocket. First, the Giants' defensive line, non-existent. We talked about it last week with Dexter Lawrence. He's checked out. He does not look like the player that he was. And at 9 sacks through 8 weeks, he's not the player anymore. Listen, how can you ask your best player to continuously go out there week by week and perform at the best of his abilities when your team has nothing on the offensive side?
You can't.
Can't.
All right. So that's a positive. Panthers may not need a quarterback. Giants be top of the draft.
There you go.
Now I'm going to give you 2 player positives and 2 important players that I think need to be on the field the rest of the year because I need to see more of. And maybe I'm going to be laughing at myself in 2 weeks that I said this. Number 1, Evan Neal.
Yeah.
The Giants, we said this when Andrew Thomas got hurt on One Giant Step. Move Illuminor over to left tackle and play Evan Neal at right tackle. I had seen enough of Josh Azudu at left tackle to know he stinks. They ended up going to Chris Hubbard after Azudu stink, and they took him 2 variations of this before Hubbard's illness, before they finally played Evan Neal at right tackle today. And I don't know what organizational friction really exists between Evan Neal and the New York Giants. But when he finally got on the field today, albeit versus a bad Panther defense, Evan Neal was the highest grade player on Pro Football Focus.
One pressure in over 40 snaps.
Yeah, I don't know if, and again, this is the Panthers, so I'm taking a grain of salt. It's not the Steelers and their pass rush. I watched this game today, and it was the first time I watched a game Evan Neal played in his career. I was like, man, he looked good.
He doesn't
No, he looked good.
Yeah.
So I want Evan Neal. This is it. This should be the line the rest of the year. If Andrew Thomas is out, Illuminor left tackle, Neal at right tackle. The other guy, Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
Jalen Hyatt made a couple plays today, and he also, was the guy that they tried to target down the field early in that game. Look, with all due respect, Darius Slayton concussions, you didn't want to trade him. You can't tell me after what Jalen Hyatt did today. It wasn't like the most productive day, but the quarterback stinks. I saw him run things other than just straight fly routes down the field. Can I see more Jalen Hyatt before I'm throwing away a third-round pick from 2 years ago?
It was shocking. They actually tried to go to him between 10 and 20 yards. They've seen the deep balls. We know what Jalen Hyatt can bring. We know his speed. We know his agility. But the fact that they trusted him, in the medium range, 10 to 20 yards, I think that says something about not only the kind of player that he is, but what they were actually willing to do going into this game, knowing that Darius Slayton was going to be traveling with the team because of the concussion. Jalen Hyatt, we know he's a talented wide receiver. It's just how talented and in what ways. And I think today proved that he can be more than the deep threat. He can be more than the Daniel Jones chuck at 50 yards down the field type of player.
All right. I want to do a little rapid fire here. I think the best way to do the next couple of minutes of this podcast, let's face it, we're entering the bye week. We see the rock bottom at 2-8. I want you to answer these questions honestly without much thought, and then you can expand upon. And I'll give mine as well. All right? I have them teed up, ready to go.
Yeah.
One giant step here, everywhere podcasts are available. Bryce, Gelman, Shaun, Morash. Bryce, is Brian Daboll the New York Giants coach in 2025?
Yes, 100%. I think we talked about it. We talked about this game being the reason why he doesn't.
100%.
100%. I think he's the coach of the New York. Why do you leave Daniel Jones in if you're coaching for your job? Why do you play Daniel Jones if you're trying to win games because
unless you think Locke is that bad?
Because you think that you are going to lose, and if you lose, then you're going to get fired. You don't play Daniel Jones. You at least give it a chance. You know what I mean? You may know that Drew Lock isn't the guy, but you throw him out on the field because you want to have a chance.
Here's the truth. I have been steadfast, and Daboll will be back. John Mara quieted those comments a couple weeks ago. I don't know how you feel comfortable when you lose again to the Carolina Panthers. I just don't know because this was the last true winnable game.
It took 2 fumbles and it took 2 interceptions for them to lose that game. And a missed field goal.
I agree. They win the game with a better quarterback. I don't think it's on coaching.
And a field goal.
But perception's everything.
43-yard field goal. They win the game.
And Gano should have made that field goal. Perception's everything, though.
That's not on Daboll.
I agree, but public perception is going to make this. Okay, so that's your. So I'm going to say Daboll is back, but I'm not as confident as I was 24 hours ago. All right. Do the Giants win another football game this year?
Watching right now. We're watching how bad this Cowboys team is right now.
Thanksgiving.
We're watching how bad this Cowboys team is. That game, completely win. 100%. I'm not saying 100% they're going to win the game, but they could win that game. They could. It's not going to be crazy.
Well, and look, it's football, right? They could beat the New Orleans Saints. You never know. They could beat the Falcons. I think they surprise and win one game. I'm kind of with you. I feel like we're going to have a Thanksgiving win.
We're going to be sitting at Thanksgiving dinner.
But that's it. One win?
Shoving turkey down our throats.
Right. One win?
Watch our quarterback dreams of the future go up in smoke because the Giants did win a meaningless game on Thanksgiving.
Is that it, though? One win? I think one win. I think one. I think they're winning 3 games. Now, does Mara look at Daboll and bring? I think ultimately the idea of picking their own quarterback will come in. I think the Giants are picking top 3 in the draft with that. Okay. Now, forget what you want. What will happen? I believe because they signed him, Drew Lock is going to be next up before Tommy DeVito. I think they're going to give Lock a start.
Yeah.
So my question is, does Drew Lock start every game the rest of the year, or do they eventually make a move to DeVito?
Yeah, we've been talking about the last 3 weeks. That's been like my most steadfast.
Because think about that's the reason I say that. That's a tough tie-in for a head coach. If you're going to sit Daniel Jones here, and I don't think anybody will fault him for that, and you make the move to Lock, doing that a second time.
Yeah.
With like a shorter leash and then going to DeVito. That's, it happened last year with Tyrod Taylor because he got hurt. To sit Lock, that's what I'm saying. Or should we get DeVito? Because, if Locke's that bad, then that starts to make the coach look like he doesn't know what he's doing. He sat Jones to go to Locke. He's that bad. Now you're going to DeVito?
At what point do you think John Mara gets involved and says, we need something. We need some juice. We need some excitement to put butts in seats. At what point does he say that? And
I hope
the
he doesn't.
Option is Tommy DeVito.
I hope he doesn't. But if that is the case, the answer should be Tommy DeVito. And I think Tommy DeVito is the guy that should. However, let's be real here. Giant fans, let's be real. We are in a spot where if the Giants don't win any more games from here to the end, they're going to be the team picking first overall. They control their destiny for that, right? Who gives you a better chance to knock yourself out of the perch and draft the quarterback, Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock? DeVito. So you may, deep down, ultimately, if you're swallowing a loss like this to the Panthers, you may want that loss ultimately versus or those losses to mount with Drew Lock playing. Yeah. So, Bryce, it's a fascinating, put it this way, for a team that has 2 wins and is sometimes uninteresting, they have a fascinating stretch coming up here at the end of November into December. They do. And with that, we're going to cover that all here on One Giant Step. Look, I think all of us, this is going to be a little disclaimer for you. Mental health. We are going to take a mental health Giants break here. We are entering the bye week. Now, unless something breaks, if we find out Daniel Jones is for sure benched here before the bye week or whatever, then sure, we'll be back with you on a One Giant Step to handle any of that. But I think ultimately we're going to get to a spot where we don't know anything until after the bye, and then that's where we'll be back covering Giant football, and hopefully it's with a new quarterback situation. How about that?
Listen, fingers crossed it's still Daniel Jones because he gives you a worse chance to win. We know exactly.
Yeah.
Like, let me before we end. Look at the options. There's one guy now. There's one guy at the top now. It's Cam Ward. There's no one else. Ewers is not there anymore. He's a bum. Beck does not look good whatsoever. He's got one of the best supporting.
You know how the combine works.
I'm just saying. Look, you know how the combine works.
Cam Ward's my guy too. Cam Ward's my guy. What I'm not gonna do is I'm not gonna knock any of these quarterbacks because I'm gonna be like a fool behind any one of them when they come. I know. But yes, Ward is my guy.
Cam Ward.
Ward is my guy. And maybe we should do more coverage of these quarterbacks like we said earlier in the year.
What else are we going to do?
What else are we going to do?
What else are we going to talk about?
Now, we did do the show from my father's backyard bar, Bob's Bar, full football Sunday here. The Sunday ticket was flowing. All the games were flowing. What was your thoughts here? Little Long Island fun football paradise here.
Amazing setup. The best part about it is watching these Jets fans absolutely implode.
I wish I had a GoPro on me during the Giant game. I wonder if we were that angry and that vile. But that's New York football. And I'll leave with this. If you are a Giant fan that wants solace with the Jets stuff or whatever, would you rather be the Jets with Aaron Rodgers controlling the organization or the Giants with a quarterback to pick in the top 2 at the draft? I'll leave it at that. At Bryce Gelman on Twitter. At Shaun Morash on Twitter. One Giant Step everywhere podcasts are available, of course, free on the Audacy app, YouTube, WFAN page. Giant fans, this year sucks. We will try to make sure the podcast doesn't suck as well over the final stretch of this season. Thank you for taking one giant live step with us.